the way, having the opportunity to go to the US, spend some time there doing some different things with Deloitte, to then come back, work out what it was that I really enjoyed, and then work towards there, sort of build that path to partnership, is sort of what kept me at Deloitte. And then that was sort of the thing for me to work towards. And then now being a partner, it's more about how can I have an impact on my clients, the community, my team in that role.
Welcome to Voices of Gender Equity, the podcast where we deep dive into real and raw stories of impact. We're your hosts, Ashley McGrath.
And I'm Henry Cooper.
And each episode, we're aiming to inspire and influence you, our listeners, into action by bringing you authentic conversations, success stories, and practical advice.
Join us as we amplify the voices of individuals from all walks of life, activists, scholars, CEOs, and everyday champions sharing their journeys, insights, and strategies for driving meaningful change.
So, whether you're a seasoned advocate or just beginning to explore this crucial topic, Voices of Gender Equity is your space to listen, learn, and engage. Joining us on today's episode is Lauren Jones. Lauren is a tax partner at Deloitte, which is a multinational professional services network. We're also very lucky at Team CGE to have Lauren's support as the treasurer for CEOs for Gender Equity. So Lauren, we know your name and we know where you work, but I'd love just to set the scene a little bit for our listeners in sharing a little bit about who is Lauren Jones.
Yeah, no problem, and thank you for having me. So professionally, Lauren Jones, I'm a partner at Deloitte. I've been a partner for the last 6 years, and before that have pretty much spent my entire career with Deloitte, both here in Australia and the US, starting as a graduate back in 2006, which is a long time ago. Personally, I am a mum to 2 little toddlers, so I've had my 2 rounds of maternity leave whilst being a partner, back at work for a year tomorrow. After having my son. Made it. And married as well to my husband Lee, who's a workplace health and safety professional. South African by background, if you can hear it a little bit in my accent, but I've been in Australia for a long time.
Amazing. I didn't know the South African heritage. I'm actually loving this about this podcast series. I'm learning so much.
Yeah, you learn so much about people when they come and sit down.
Which is awesome. So thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Pleasure.
So you're the partner with Deloitte.
Yes.
Is that something that you always wanted to do? Like, how did you decide that was the route that you wanted to take?
Well, at university, I sort of wasn't sure what I wanted to do. At school, I enjoyed numbers. I liked accounting. I liked maths. So I thought I'll start with commerce, see where we go. Ended up getting a graduate position at Deloitte in tax, and it just went from there. I think I've always been a fairly ambitious person. I always need to have something to work towards. And for me, as my career developed, that was partnership for me. I think along the way, having the opportunity to go to the US, spend some time there doing some different things with Deloitte, to then come back, work out what it was that I really enjoyed, and then work towards there, sort of build that path to partnership, is sort of what kept me at Deloitte. And then that was sort of the thing for me to work towards. And then now being a partner, it's more about how can I have an impact on my clients, the community, my team in that role. Yeah.
And how do you think like that role? Do you use that kind of role like outside of work? Like, do you get into anything maybe like side business or anything like that? Like, is there anything that you do outside of work where you use those kinds of numbers skills?
No, I try not to do work outside work. Not really. I think it's given me opportunity in terms of getting involved, like with organisations like CGE. So the Treasurer Board role came up because Deloitte is a member of CGE, and we were looking for a treasurer at the time. And it was something that, having just come back from my first round of maternity leave, I thought, this is great. This is exactly what I would like to get involved in. And the progression of team development, providing opportunities for others is a really big part of the role that I like to play. And so having sort of being able to sort of tie those two together is what really interested me about the treasurer role. So I suppose that's sort of where I've used the partner role. Other than that, sort of I like to do other things. Other numbers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. And so, I'd like to ask, you got involved with CG, obviously the opportunity came up. So, was it that, or what CEOs for Gender Equity was about that kind of, got you really interested in this space, or was it before, or was it, a defining moment or something you've always been interested in, gender equity?
I'd have to say it wasn't something I was always interested in. I think becoming a mother and returning from parental leave opened my eyes to all of that. I'd say I was fairly naive in terms of what parenthood involved, working in parenthood involved, all of that. I think I just had absolutely no idea. So a lot of my friends at the time didn't have kids. We've all had kids quite a bit later on in life and later on in careers. I think that first coming back from parental leave and going, wow, this is actually quite hard. And our organisation's set up to help women succeed coming back from parental leave and going back into the workforce was sort of that trigger.
Right.
But then more broadly, what CGE stood for and the ethos at that time was about that top-down message and the top-down enablement of organisations to be able to support women and increase that gender diversity, gender equity piece was what really interested me. And then I suppose that exposure to other CEOs within Perth, what they're doing, their thoughts, it was very interesting. And I think it's been a very, very interesting couple of years watching CGE evolve, the members and whatnot as well.
Yeah, it's really an exciting space. And I like that you said like how that was kind of like the trigger, you returning to work. It was kind of like the trigger of your path moving forward a little bit, going into it. What advice would you give, parents like that have been out of work for, a little bit and wanted to return to work after having kids?
Oh, I think for women in particular, I think you do have a loss of confidence. But it's just reminding yourself that you haven't lost your ability to do anything or your skills or anything like that. It's just getting back into it, and it will all come back to you very quickly. So don't feel like you can't do it or you've lost a bit of capacity or skills or whatever it might be. It'll all come back really quickly. But it's around, I think, setting very real expectations for yourself, your partner, if there's a partner, your family and your workplace around what does that look like for you, what's going to work for you, your family and the business, because it all needs to work together.
That's right.
It can't be one or the other because that's not going to work longer term. Setting those expectations and then holding those boundaries for yourself, because as soon as you let boundaries slip and you do more than you can, it's overwork, it's stress, and it's hard to manage.
Start getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. So be very, and I think it takes a bit of practice and it takes a bit of time to work out what's going to work. You don't know when you just go back into it. You've got to figure that out over time. But knowing you can't do it all. There's a bit of balance in all of it and just working out what works for you and being clear and communicating that to work and to family so that everybody has an understanding. It was quite clear around where they sit.
Yeah.
And
like, what about all the skills you develop when you become a parent? Far out. Like, I thought I was organised before. Now I'm like, it's like, it's so we need to kind of talk about that and give credit to that. Like,
I thought my brain was full before. It's very, very full now.
Well, I've had CEOs say to me, Ash, I'll take a working parent any day of the week because I'll get more out of them than full-time employees, and they work part-time. Like, as in, like, they're just so...
The efficiency.
Efficient.
Yes. Always efficient.
Just working parents, and really, it's a smart approach because you do get almost like more bang for your buck, or, it's fascinating. But I feel like, people don't recognize the skills that you develop while you're on parental leave and then coming back. Like, you can just achieve so much because you have to learn to be really slick and really efficient. So I think we need to almost give credit to people in a way,
efficient with time.
That's what it is. So I'm keen to know, for you, you mentioned like you want to try and, inspire and influence, change yourself now, being a partner. So I want to ask, like, in your team, how would you like, define gender equity, and what does it kind of look like in the tax department at Deloitte?
I think more broadly, gender equity for me means equal opportunity, but it means providing the support systems to both genders to have the ability to take advantage of that opportunity equally.
Yes.
So whilst there might be equal opportunity, the ability for people to access and take advantage of those opportunities is different.
Correct.
So it's putting the right support systems and processes and whatever it might be in place to enable that opportunity to be taken by anybody. So I think that's what it means for me, and that's what I try to do in my role with the team, and I'm quite fortunate in that our team's got a lot of sort of full-time younger workers, and then at the senior level we've got a lot of people that are parents and fairly new parents in the same position as me, who work sort of 4 days a week or 3 days a week, and so we've got a good blend. But I think it's showing the younger team members that it's possible. It is possible to have a career in professional services and have a family, and be able to juggle most of the time both of those things, because the client demands in professional services are very high.
Sure.
It's always, time and cost and delivery and high performance, but you can do both as long as you've got the right team structure in place, the right communication in place, and people feel supported. So that's what I try to role model, so people know it's possible.
Good.
But then also put that structure in place to allow people to be able to take advantage of that. And I think we have to think broader than just parents. It's, those that have caring responsibilities
100%.
or other responsibilities outside of it, so that they all feel like they can do and manage those things whilst have a good career and progress as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, totally agree. And when you're when you're at work and around, some people feel a little overwhelmed or uncertain about speaking about gender equity, or even, engaging in it and understanding what it is. What advice would you give to people that feel kind of overwhelmed and really want to get into this space and help?
I don't know, that's a hard, because when I was reflecting around sort of my career and gender equity more broadly, Deloitte in particular has always been very focused on diversity and inclusion. We've always had, as long as I've been at Deloitte in my career, programs around advancing women, recognising that we start 50-50 and we end up closer to sort of 20-80, now 30-70 by the time you get to the partnership level. So it's all about those retention strategies. So they put a lot of work into providing the environment for to retain women. And now I've forgotten the question. What was the question?
Like advice that you would, yeah, that's fine. Like advice that you would give to someone
to speak up in
where,
terms of gender equity.
speaking up,
Yeah,
and who's in their work environment, who wants to engage
Yeah.
in those kinds of conversations and help.
I think it's more just asking people how they're going,
Yeah.
showing an interest.
Yeah.
Where colleagues or team members or even bosses have families or have commitments outside of work, it's asking them how they're going. I don't think we do that enough.
Agreed.
And I don't think we do that top down enough necessarily around just how are you finding everything, how are you going, settling into this new routine, this new juggle, whatever that might be, and is there anything I can do to help, or would you like me to just listen? Because sometimes you just need to talk about it. You can't solve it, you can't resolve it, but just to be able to talk about it, you feel better. So I think it's sort of starting those conversations with how are you going, and going from there, showing that support, having that empathy and understanding, I think goes a long way to providing that more inclusive workspace for people, men and women too, and probably more so for the men now that we're seeing more men take parental leave, doing more in the home, taking more of that caring responsibility. I think that's quite hard for them sometimes. And I certainly see that with my husband around that juggle with work, how to manage, a bit of part-time caring responsibility, it's different for them.
That's
They
right.
don't think the same way we do. So having those conversations and him being able to have those conversations with his team, I think helps a lot.
And I think, like, especially for fathers, it's when you do take on those responsibilities, now you have a deeper appreciation for the other side, your partner, and how they go and how they're feeling.
Yep.
You know, so it opens up that kind of dialogue
Yep.
with each other, and that communication with each other. That's it's a lot more healthier. And when you have that kind of appreciation, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, I know what you were talking about last week. You were like, this is stressful.
Yeah. But having that opportunity for them to have that time in a sort of a new father context, have that time to have with their kids, 2 weeks after birth, it's not enough. It doesn't give you that time to really be involved, provide that support, create that connection, which I think all goes to having more resilient kids, having better family networks, having better support systems. So if we can enhance that side of it, ultimately that means so much more for the family, for the workplace, for Australia, for communities.
100%.
Providing that equal opportunity, I think, is really important. So that's a big focus of mine too, around, some of the men that go, oh, I'm not sure if I should take parental leave. I was like, you will take parental leave. Because you won't, this is the only time you get to take it. And you don't get this time back. And they are so thankful coming back that they've had that time.
Yeah.
So I think, it's really important.
And you raise a really good point, because it's parents supporting parents. It's not just women have that gendered norm where we are naturally kind of seen as the primary parent or carer, and men as secondary, and we're trying to break it down from both ends. But there's a lot of like attention and focus on supporting mothers, but it's like we need to build that level of psychological safety and break down those social norms about men working part-time or men working flexibly. Like, we need to kind of tackle that if we want to tackle, this end as well, like kind of coming at it from both ends. And I don't think there's enough focus on, so the fact that you just call it out and you're like, no, you are taking the leave. Some people will need that nudge because they're still not comfortable, and we need to kind of break that down so that just kind of, that just goes away over time. But it takes people like you making really, having these deliberate conversations and kind of gently nudging people in order to drive that societal level change.
Yeah.
So letting people know that it's okay.
Yes.
And that's the most important thing. It's like, I see you. It's okay. Like, men want to be around their children, you know? So it's giving them an opportunity to do that.
I think it was really well put in Annabel Crabb's book, The Wife Drought, around that, providing the men the safe space to be able to take the leave, the part-time bit to look after families or others or whatever that might be, and not have the judgment of the rest of the team that they don't work as hard or they're not contributing as much. It goes as much for the men as it does for the women. So breaking down those barriers and providing that opportunity makes it better for everybody. You can't do the one without the other, as you said, Ash.
Yeah. And so Deloitte does some really cool stuff in the gender equity space. And a lot of people I meet at Deloitte have been at Deloitte for ages. And have really like successful careers. Like it's a bit of a standout for that, because you don't really hear too much of that kind of tenure and things these days. So I want to ask, like, from your perspective, like, what has been maybe one or two of the most kind of impactful initiatives around gender equity, which Deloitte, which has kind of aided, supported your journey, or that you enjoyed, or which really had a big impact on you?
I think one for me and then one for my team. One for me was being very deliberate around sort of challenging unconscious bias when it comes to recruitment, promotion, pay, things like that. That even for women, men, both, around, are you recruiting the right people with a diverse mindset, or are you recruiting more of yourself?
Nice.
Because having that diverse workforce makes it better, and really putting those processes in place to challenge that. Have you really gone out there and scoured the market. Are we missing any females? If we haven't had any female applicants, are they people that we can approach to,
Nice.
join the roles? I think that's a good challenge, which is not it's not sort of a process or initiative. It's more of something you put in place just to make sure that we are being truly objective when it comes to those types of things.
It's a cultural norm.
And I think one of those moments was when we had somebody on parental leave, and it was promotion remuneration review time, and it was kind of glossed over because she wasn't there. I was like, well, hang on a moment. Just because she's not here doesn't mean we don't talk about her performance while she was here. Is she due a pay rise, etc.? And it was hold on, stop. We can't just sort of gloss over it.
Wow.
Come back and talk about this person, and yes, she's due a pay rise, etc., etc. So that was good. It wasn't just she's not here, so we don't need to think about her. And we do promote people while they're on parental leave or about to go on parental leave, and that's great. It means parental leave doesn't mean anything in the context of your career. It's a very small window. And then for the team, I think it was the change in our parental leave policy around having the same amount of leave for men and women, regardless of whether you're the primary carer or not. We've had challenges, I think, in implementing that from a business perspective, and my team in particular, I think it was just timing. We had all of our very senior people out on parental leave at the same time. That you can't do anything about, but just something that we had to work through. But it was providing that opportunity for all the men in the team to take that time with their kids and then come back into the business after that. So that was great.
And can I just ask, because Deloitte is kind of like one of our gold stars for your parental leave program, like, what's some like ad hoc feedback around the business, around especially probably from the men, which this change in policy from certainly no maternity, paternity, and taking away then the next step of the primary and secondary. So it's parental leave for everyone. Yeah. So was it what, about 2 years ago you did that?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So like what what are some of this like feedback ad hoc from that?
And I think it's been great.
Yeah.
People recognise that they get to have that time. They're not forced into a set time period. It allows them to manage who's coming back to work when, between husband and wife or partners or whoever it might be. So it just creates a lot more flexibility, I think, for the family and for work. The challenge is just trying to, in a professional services sense, manage the business. But I think that's where the team comes into it, in that certainly from my experience, when I went on parental leave, you don't have time to do work in those first few months after having a baby. And so my other partners stepped in and helped me on all of my clients. And they really only reached out if they had to, which was great. So I really was able to have that time, and I had that team support behind me to be able to do that. And so we try to do that for all the members in our team when they take leave, is that it's proper leave. It's not just working from home to do that too.
I know. It's like, I know quite a few people in Deloitte, and every time we go, if I see them at like networking events, or if we're out and we're just catching up, they say that they work at Deloitte with like, it's like a badge of honor for them.
Oh,
like
good.
they say, and you can see all the time, like, and just like we were saying before, it's like people just don't leave, So that's it's a real testament to your organization and how it's people love being there.
Yeah. That's lovely to hear.
Yeah. It's great. Just off of that, just the evolution now. So where do you see, now that gender equity is in the minds of people now, where do you see it going? Like, what's the evolution look like?
I'm not sure. I think we've got a way to go into terms of finding the balance, and particularly around this flexibility piece where, it went so far during COVID, and then now it's being pulled back the other way in some organisations. I think we've got a little bit of a way to go to find that. I would hate to see flexibility go altogether, because it makes it so much harder. And I understand, like, in different roles and things like that, where you can't work flexibly, it's a challenge. I think I'm very lucky to be in the position I am, and with the organisation that I'm with, that flexibility is here. And we have that, and it's not going anywhere. But I think there has to be this sort of meeting of the minds of business and employees around what works for both. As I said before, it can't go one way or the other. Somebody loses out. So I think there's a way to go in finding what's the right balance for a business on flexibility, which then leads to gender equity. I think there are a lot of businesses that still have quite a way to go on their parental leave policies, other types of policies that sort of really sit behind gender equity. And I'd love to see more women push through leadership roles, provided those opportunities. Certainly in Western Australia, I don't think we've got enough female leadership across the board. I think it's still very male-oriented. But it's hard to put females in those leadership positions if you don't have that pipeline from the beginning. And so being very deliberate about having the right people in place, having a pipeline of female talent for future leadership roles is important, not just waking up one day and go, who am I going to choose? Who's there for me to choose? You've got to be deliberate about it, because if you're not, we're never going to sort of solve that problem.
And those 2 points are kind of like quite intertwined, in my opinion, because to get more women in leadership, then flexibility and support for parents and carers are two of the biggest levers to kind of accelerate gender equity. And you're right, some companies have, kind of gone backwards, or they could certainly do so much more with it, and by doing so open up the kind of playing field. But I saw some statistics from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, which showed that, we're pushing for more women in leadership. Pretty much every organisation is trying to get more women in leadership, but only 7% of leadership roles are part-time. So it's like I think we've got like a way to go. There's a disconnect there. We're trying to get more women in leadership, yet most women work part-time, yet only 7% of leadership roles are part-time.
Yeah.
We need to kind of, there's an opportunity there to...
And why can't they be part-time? Like 4 days a week, I don't think it's part-time.
That's right.
It's like everybody always equates to like great outcomes. You have to be in the office about 12, 14 hours a day. And it's like, if somebody can do it in 5, wouldn't that be a benefit for your organization?
Yes.
Isn't that more efficiency?
Yep.
So it's like, worry about the outcomes, not the amount of hours that somebody is working. So
100%.
Yep.
So look, I'm sure we really love Deloitte, and we big you up, and you're one of our favourites, but you're not meant to have favourites, but you are. But I'm sure it's not always been smooth sailing. So in your... And it might not be, it could be, outside of Deloitte, just, in life or friends, whatever other scenarios. But have you faced adversity in, your own, journey as in your own career, or anything to do with kind of gender equity? Have you faced adversity? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I wouldn't say, as I say, I've been very fortunate through my career where I've never felt that it was a gender equity issue. It was where, opportunities might not have been given, or, I wasn't considered for a role. I've never thought of it as a female-male or a gender issue, and maybe if I thought all the way back then, could it have been? I don't know. But I certainly never felt like that. So I don't think it's been sort of adversity from a gender equity perspective. I think there's been more sort of that gender bias around, assuming the male in the room was always the more senior and the female wasn't. When, new clients, whatever it might be, they're sort of really old school thinking the female will take the notes and, that kind of thing, or get the tea or whatever it might be. And this is going back a while, but it's still in my career, which is 18 years, not that long ago. So it's more been sort of small things like that as opposed to adversity in my career. And I think I've never really given it too much thought in that. I've always just pushed for what I thought I deserved, or what I wanted to work for, or gone after those opportunities and proved myself for them. So yeah, it's interesting. I think though nowadays it's again going back to that unconscious bias of when you are in that leadership position and you're considering people for opportunities or for roles, have you really thought about all the people in your organisation that might be capable of doing so, and not just a small pool of people that you work with all the time or that you know? making sort of a conscious effort to see who's out there, see what they can do, what's the value they contribute, and then make a decision on that basis. I probably experienced a little bit of that around opportunities being a little bit closed, but I don't think that's a gender equity issue as such. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I always like the with leaders. It's redefining. It's. I always tell people, if you close your eyes and if somebody says, "What does a leader look like?" What is the image that comes into your head? And 9 times out of 10, it's always a male. You know, and it's the characteristics around leaders, and those characteristics. I always tell people, I'm like, those aren't gender specific characteristics. Like, those are learned behaviors. Those are innate learned behaviors that you can actually develop, and those are skills. I was like, so we have to change that kind of image that people have when they close their eyes and they hear the word leader, you know? And in your career, who are some of the people in your life that kind of, whether they're mentors or inspirations for you in your career, on your career journey, or even around gender equity?
I was thinking about this, and I'd have to say there weren't any from a gender equity point of view. From a career coaching guidance perspective, absolutely. From a gender equity perspective, no. And I say that because for the most part, a lot of the partners in our business were sort of the primary earners, and the spouses did not work. And so for them, they never really had to think about that. They thought about work, and they didn't have to think about the home side of it. So I've kind of found that I'm certainly the first tax partner to have kids whilst being a partner here in Perth. So I've had to sort of pave the way around how do we do that. And, the reality is most families these days are 2 working parent families. It's not 1 working parent. What does that look like? How does that impact the juggle? And it's quite hard to have some of those conversations with others who don't have to think about it in that sense, because all they have to think about is work and someone else deals with home. So, from a gender equity point of view, haven't really had that. And it's been more sort of listening and reading and observing, like Peter Bennett, for example, and the way what he does at Clough, things around what does a gender equity champion look like and how can they then support others, because I don't think I've necessarily had that myself in my career.
Fair enough. Well, the time is just running away for us.
I have so many other questions.
Things, but I'm going to have to just nail it into one final wrap-up question, Lauren.
Yes.
And that is, as a partner now, and you want to have an impact and start, building your legacy. I want to ask, what's the most rewarding aspect of that work, and how does it resonate with you personally?
It's that legacy piece around leaving from a work perspective, leaving the partnership in a better place than when I came into it. That's the ultimate goal in terms of the work that I do, and for that means providing opportunities for others to step into partnership, helping them build that business case whilst also being able to manage home life and other things outside of work, and make that culture and that everything inclusive of that work-life family balance. I think juggle whatever it might be, which includes the gender equity piece around making sure everybody's on the same page around how do we make our team feel supported, how do we make our partners feel supported, so that we can all do our best and be engaged, because ultimately that leads to a better workplace and better opportunities for people. So I think that would be it.
That's right. And you've just nailed it, because that's kind of like the next, obviously CEOs for Gender Equity is built on the principle that change starts from the top, but research shows that the best gender equity solutions are the ones which involve everyone, and actually connect people. So you've got, you're bang on with your kind of approach and your mindset there about ideally there's not even a gender thing. It's just inclusion, it's respect,
It's the way we work.
for everybody.
Yep.
And then everyone's set to gain from that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have loved
Great.
talking to you and finding out some new stuff.
Yeah.
Henry,
Yeah.
which is great. We really, really appreciate you coming to talk to us, and we really, really appreciate your support as our treasurer of CEOs for Gender Equity. So thank you on both
Thank you
fronts.
so
No
much.
worries. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
We hope this conversation has sparked a passion, revealed new insights, and inspired you to take action in the pursuit of gender equity.
Remember, change begins with each one of us. So until next time, keep raising your voice, keep championing equity, and keep making a difference.
This is Ashley McGrath
And Henry Cooper.
signing off from Voices of Gender Equity, real and raw stories of impact.